Jake walked into the big white building and stopped. His mouth fell open. The place was huge. The ceiling went up and up like a giant cave. Blue lights hung everywhere, making everything glow soft and strange. "Wow," said Lisa next to him. She had her backpack on one shoulder and was staring at everything. "Real aliens. I can't believe it." Jake nodded. 2 months ago, he was just a normal college kid in Los Angeles. Now he was here to learn from aliens. The Zephyrians had come to Earth to teach humans how to stay safe in emergencies. Jake thought it would look good when he tried to get a job later. "Where is everybody?" Ryan asked. He was tall with messy red hair that stuck up all over. Ryan studied engineering and asked way too many questions in every class. Amy pointed across the room. "Over there, I see other students." About 30 college students were scattered around the huge room. Some sat on weird curved benches. Others stood in small groups talking quietly. Everyone looked nervous. Jake knew some faces from the meeting last week. There was Steve from Oregon, who always wore his baseball cap. Ben from Texas kept checking his phone every few seconds. Danny had his camera out taking pictures of everything. "Welcome, young humans." The voice came from behind them. Jake turned around and saw his first real alien. The thing was about as tall as Jake, but totally different. It looked like a giant bug with a hard green shell covered in yellow spots. 6 skinny legs. Held it up. Its arms were thin, but looked strong. The head was the weirdest part. 2 huge eyes like a fly sat on the sides. When it moved its head, the eyes sparkled with tiny rainbows. "I am Instructor Veltar," the alien said. Its voice came from a small glowing box on its chest. "I will teach you during this program." Another alien walked up beside it. This one was smaller and more blue. "This is Assistant Instructor Crix," Veltar said. "We are happy to share our knowledge with your kind." Jake tried not to stare, but it was hard. The aliens moved weird. Their legs moved like they were dancing. When they turned their heads, it was fast and sharp like birds. "Please sit down," Crix said through his own voice box. "We have much to talk about." The students found spots on the curved benches. Jake sat between Lisa and Amy. The benches felt strange, like they were made for bodies that bent differently. Veltar moved to the front. Behind him, the wall lit up with pictures and words. Some were in English, but others looked totally alien. "Your kind asked for our help," Veltar began. "You want to learn our emergency methods. These methods have kept our people safe for 10,000 years." The wall showed pictures of the alien world. It looked peaceful. No mountains or oceans, just rolling hills with purple grass. Strange mushroom buildings grew from the ground. "Our world is very stable," Crix explained. "We do not have dangerous events like your planet. No earthquakes, no volcanoes, no bad storms. Our people have lived safely for thousands of years." Jake looked around. A few students were taking notes, but most just watched the pictures. Carol was eating a sandwich. Tony looked like he might fall asleep. "But when we started exploring space," Veltar continued, "we found that most worlds are not safe like ours. We learned we needed better ways to stay alive during emergencies. We made the best emergency system in the galaxy." New pictures appeared. Other alien species doing perfect drills. Everyone moved in straight lines following exact steps. It looked like a dance that everyone knew. "We have taught these methods to 47 different species," Crix said. "All of them got much better at surviving disasters." Amy raised her hand. "What kind of disasters?" "All kinds," Veltar replied. "Buildings falling down, environmental dangers, natural disasters. Our methods work for any emergency." Steve raised his hand. "How long does it take to learn?" "For most species, 6 months to 1 year. Crix answered. Some learn faster, some slower. It depends on their fear responses and how well they follow rules. Jake noticed something weird in how Crix said fear responses. It sounded like he was surprised anyone would need to learn how to be scared. Your kind asked for this training after disasters on your world, Veltar explained. Earthquakes, hurricanes, fires. Your leaders thought our methods could save human lives. Lisa whispered to Jake. I guess they don't know we deal with this stuff all the time. Jake nodded. Growing up in California, earthquakes were normal. He remembered being in elementary school when a small quake hit during math class. The teacher made them get under their desks for a few seconds. Then they went back to learning math. We will start with basic ideas tomorrow, Veltar announced. Today, we want you to understand how serious this is. Emergency response is not a game. Lives depend on doing things right. The alien looked around at all the human faces. Jake could not tell what it was thinking, but it seemed worried. Do you have questions before we stop? Crix asked. Megan raised her hand. Will there be homework? Both aliens stopped moving. Their big eyes looked at each other, then back at Megan. Homework? Veltar repeated slowly. You know, like work to do at home, Megan explained. This training is about staying alive, Crix said. His voice box made confused sounds. It is not. Like your schools. This is about life and death. Megan shrugged. Okay, but will there be homework? Jake saw both aliens look at each other again. Their eyes seemed to say they were very confused about these humans. We will discuss the curriculum tomorrow, Veltar said finally. Class is finished for today. As students started getting up and gathering their things, Jake heard Crix whisper to Veltar in their alien language. The translation box was still, working so everyone could hear. Are all humans like this? Crix asked. I do not know, Veltar whispered back. But I am beginning to think we may have underestimated them. Jake grabbed his backpack and headed for the door with Lisa and Amy. Outside in the parking lot, the California sun was warm and normal. That was interesting, Lisa said. Yeah, Jake agreed. I wonder what their training is going to be like. Probably a lot of rules and procedures, Amy said. They seem very organized. As they walked to their cars, Jake thought about what the aliens had said. 10,000 years of safety on a stable world. No earthquakes, no storms, no disasters. He looked up at the California sky. In the distance, he could see the mountains where wildfires burned every summer. Somewhere underground, fault lines that caused earthquakes were slowly building pressure. This was just normal life. Jake wondered what the aliens would think when they learned that humans lived with danger every single day and thought it was perfectly normal. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting. The next morning, Jake got to the training center early. He had bought coffee on the way and carried a big cup with him. The California sun was already getting hot, and he knew it would be a long day. Other students were arriving too. Everyone seemed more relaxed than yesterday. Lisa brought donuts for everyone to share. Ryan was showing Danny something on his phone. Amy was reading a thick book about rocks and earthquakes. Good morning, humans, Instructor Veltar said as he came into the room. Assistant Instructor Crix followed behind him carrying a metal case. That looked heavy. Jake noticed both aliens moved more carefully today. Their 6 legs stepped in exact patterns, and their big compound eyes kept looking around the room, watching everything. Today we start your training with basic emergency ideas, Veltar said. But first, we want to see how you naturally react to danger. Crix opened his case. Inside were dozens of small devices that looked like tiny silver bugs. He picked one up and showed it to the students. These are simulation makers, he explained. They create real experiences of dangerous situations. They use light, sound, and even smells to make your brain think you are in real danger. Cool, said Steve. Like video games? Much better than your video games, Crix replied. Your games only affect what you see and hear. Our technology can make you feel heat, cold, pressure, and movement. Your body will think the danger is real. The aliens started putting the small devices around the room. Each one made a soft humming sound and began to glow when turned on. We will start with simple situations, Veltar announced. First, a building falling down. Then a fire. Finally, what you call a natural disaster. Jake drank his coffee and waited. Around him, other students were getting comfortable. Carol had brought a pillow to sit on. Ben was still checking his phone messages. Suddenly, the room changed. The walls seemed to shake and crack. Dust fell from the ceiling even though Jake knew it was fake. Loud crashing sounds filled the air. Red lights flashed and an alarm started screaming. The alien instructors immediately went into action. They dropped low, using their 6 legs to stay steady. Their movements were quick and exact. Veltar started shouting commands in a sharp, clear voice. Emergency Rule 7, he yelled over the noise. Find strong supports. Stay away from falling. Things. Move toward exits in organized lines. Crix showed them the right way to do it. He moved in a straight line toward the nearest wall, staying low. Keeping his big eyes focused on the ceiling above, Jake looked around at his classmates. Most were watching the aliens like they were seeing a show. Tony was taking notes. Holly was recording everything with her phone. Your turn, Veltar called out. Do what we just showed you. The students stood up slowly. Some looked around, not sure what to do. Others started walking toward the exits, but not in any hurry. Faster, Crix said urgently. This is life-threatening. You must move with purpose. Jake finished his coffee and joined the group moving toward the exit. But he noticed something strange about the aliens. Both instructors had stopped their demonstration and were just watching the humans. Their big eyes moved from student to student, and their body language looked confused. Why are they not afraid? Crix whispered to Veltar in their own language. The translation device was still working, so all the humans could hear. Maybe they do not understand how serious this is, Veltar whispered back. The building collapsed. Simulation ended. The room went back to normal lighting, and the noise stopped. Good enough, Veltar announced, but he did not sound happy. Next situation. Fire emergency. This time the room filled with smoke. Not real smoke, but the simulation made it look and smell real. Orange light flickered on the walls like flames. The temperature seemed to get hotter, and Jake could hear crackling. Sounds. Again, the aliens showed perfect technique. They moved low to avoid smoke, covered their breathing holes with cloth, and headed for exits in a calm but quick way. The human students watched, and then copied what they saw. But Amy stopped to look at how the simulation made the smoke effect. Danny was still taking pictures. Sam sat down and started eating a granola bar. This is amazing technology, Amy said to Lisa. I wonder how they make it feel so real. The heat controls must be incredibly precise, Ryan added, looking up at the ceiling. Both alien instructors stopped moving. They turned to stare at the humans, who were having casual conversations in the middle of a fire emergency. Are you not worried? About the fire? Veltar asked. It's not real, said Pete. Right? I mean, you said it was a simulation. Yes, but your body should still react like it is real, Crix explained. That is the point of training. To practice right responses when you are afraid. The students looked at each other. Jake could see most of them were trying to understand. What the aliens wanted. Should we pretend to be scared? Asked Kate. Both aliens made sounds that their translation devices could not turn into English. They sounded frustrated. Moving to final situation, Veltar announced. Natural disaster. This will be our most advanced simulation. Crix opened a second case. This one had larger devices that he started placing around the room. When he turned them on, they made a low rumbling sound that seemed to come from everywhere. This simulation represents a major earthquake, Veltar explained. What your kind calls a 6.0 magnitude earthquake. Jake perked up. He had been through several real earthquakes that size. The last one was just 2 months ago when he was studying. For final exams, the simulation began. The floor seemed to shake and roll. Books fell from shelves that were not really there. The rumbling got louder. Cracks appeared in the walls. Veltar and Crix immediately went into emergency positions. They spread their 6 legs wide for balance and dropped low to the ground. Their movements were fast and exact, clearly practiced many times. Drop, cover, and hold on, Veltar called out. Stay away from windows and heavy objects. Wait for shaking. To stop before moving. Jake looked around at the other students. Most had automatically moved away from the walls and were crouching down. But they were doing it casually, like they had done it hundreds of times before, because they had. This is pretty realistic, Amy said to Ryan, though the frequency is a bit off. Real earthquakes have more of a rolling motion. The 6.0 we had last year felt stronger than this. Agreed Alex. Both alien instructors stopped their demonstration. Their compound eyes were wide, staring at the humans who were talking about the quality of the earthquake simulation instead of being terrified by it. You have been in earthquakes before? Veltar asked. Sure, said Jake. All the time. This is California. How many earthquakes have you been in? Crix asked. The students started counting. Maybe 50 or 60, said Amy. I stopped counting. After 100, added Holly. There was one last week, remembered Carol. I was at the store. The soup cans fell off the shelf. Both aliens went completely still. They turned to look at each other, having a fast conversation in their own language that the translation devices could not keep up with. Maybe, Veltar said slowly, we should try a bigger earthquake simulation. He adjusted his equipment. The rumbling got stronger. The shaking became more intense. Cracks in the fake walls grew bigger. The human students adjusted their positions slightly and kept talking. This is more like a 6.8, Amy observed. Much better. That was when Jake saw something change in the alien's posture. Both instructors were no longer showing proper earthquake response. They were staring at the humans with what looked like complete shock. The simulation ended, and the room went back to normal. Class dismissed, Veltar announced quietly. As the students gathered their things and headed for the exits, Jake heard Crix whisper to his partner, What kind of world did we come to? Outside in the parking lot, the students talked about the morning's training. That was fun, said Lisa. Their technology is really impressive. The earthquake simulation was pretty good, Amy agreed, though I think they need to work on the realism a bit more. Jake got in his car and drove home, thinking about the aliens' reactions. They seemed shocked that humans were not afraid of their simulations. But to Jake and his classmates, the fake disasters were nothing compared to real life in California. He wondered what would happen if a real emergency occurred while they were in class. How would aliens from a stable, safe world handle actual danger? Jake had a feeling he was about to find out. 3 days later, Jake was getting used to the routine. Morning coffee, drive to the training center, watch aliens show emergency procedures, copy what they did, go home. The aliens seemed more and more confused by the human students, but they kept trying. Today, Instructor Veltar had promised their biggest simulation yet. He called it a complete disaster response drill that would combine everything they had learned. This exercise will test all your skills, Veltar told the students. We will show you multiple emergency situations one after another. You must respond to each one correctly while getting ready for the next. Assistant Instructor Crix was setting up more equipment than Jake had ever seen before. Dozens of the small simulation devices covered every surface. Larger machines hummed in the corners. The aliens had even brought in some kind of hologram projector that made the air shimmer. First situation, Veltar began. Asteroid impact. The room changed instantly. The ceiling seemed to disappear, replaced by a view of space. A huge rock was falling toward them, getting bigger every second. The air filled with a whooshing sound like wind, even though they were inside. The two alien instructors immediately dropped into perfect defensive positions. Their 6 legs spread wide, their bodies pressed close to the ground. They moved with the kind of precision that comes from years of practice. Cover your heads, Veltar called. Out. Get ready for impact vibrations. Secure loose objects. The human students watched the approaching asteroid with interest. Danny was trying to guess how big it was. Amy was explaining to Lisa how real asteroid impacts work differently than this simulation. The atmospheric heating would actually start much earlier, Amy said, and the pressure wave would arrive before any pieces. Jake noticed that both aliens had stopped their demonstration to stare at Amy, who was calmly discussing space science while a fake asteroid was about to destroy the building. The asteroid impact simulation ended with a flash of light and a rumbling sound. Right away, the next scenario began. Volcanic eruption, Crix announced. Now the room filled with red light and the smell of sulfur. Fake lava seemed to pour down the walls. The temperature rose and ash began falling from the ceiling. Again, the aliens demonstrated perfect technique. They moved quickly but carefully, avoiding the fake lava flows, covering their breathing holes. Heading for high ground. The humans followed along, but Jake could see they were more interested in the technology and the emergency. Ryan was examining how the holographic lava looked so realistic. Steve was waving his hand through the fake ash to see how it felt. Amazing engineering, Ryan commented to Tony. The touch feedback is incredible. I wonder what kind of computer power this needs, Tony replied. Veltar made a sound that his translation device turned into a frustrated sigh. You should be focused on survival, not technology. But we are surviving, said Pete. Look, we're all doing the procedures you showed us. It was true. All the students were doing exactly what the aliens had demonstrated. They just were not doing it with any sense of urgency or fear. The volcanic simulation ended, and Crix began setting up the final scenario. Building collapse, he announced. This will be our most intense simulation. The entire structure will appear to fail around you. The new simulation was impressive. The walls seemed to crack and crumble. Ceiling tiles fell from above. The sound was tremendous, like a real building coming apart. Even the floor appeared to shift and buckle. The alien instructors once again showed perfect form. They moved with lightning speed, finding structural supports, avoiding falling debris, coordinating their movements with hand signals. But as Jake watched his fellow students, he realized something the aliens had not figured out yet. The humans were not just copying the movements. They were improving on them. Amy had found a better route to the exit that avoided more of the falling debris. Sam had discovered a more stable position that required less energy to maintain. Carol was helping Holly reach a safer spot, coordinating their movements better than the aliens' rigid procedures allowed. Interesting variations, Ben observed, watching Amy's technique. More efficient than the standard procedure. That was when Jake felt it, a small tremor, barely noticeable. Not part of the simulation. Something real. He looked around to see if anyone else had noticed. Lisa was frowning slightly. Amy had stopped moving and was looking at the floor. Did you feel that? Amy asked quietly. Feel what? Veltar demanded, his compound eyes focusing on her. The ground moved, Amy replied. Just a little. Not part of your simulation. Both aliens froze. Their equipment was still running the building collapse scenario, but they were no longer paying attention to it. That is impossible, Crick said. Our geological surveys showed this area is completely stable. Jake felt another tremor, stronger this time. A few other students had noticed too. They were looking at each other with questioning expressions. Said Kate. I think that was real. The tremor came again, lasting longer. Some of the aliens' equipment began rattling on its tables. Impossible, Veltar repeated, but his voice sounded less certain. Amy pulled out her phone and opened an app. Earthquake monitor says 2.3 magnitude, very shallow. Probably just a small fault adjustment. There. Aliens turned to stare at her. You have earthquake monitoring on your personal communication device? Sure, Amy said. Everyone in California does. There are like 5 different apps for it. That was when the real shaking began. At first, it felt like the building collapse. Simulation, but Jake could tell the difference immediately. Real earthquakes have a different rhythm than fake ones. This was deeper, more complex, like the whole Earth was adjusting itself. The aliens' simulation equipment began shutting down automatically as sensors detected the real ground movement. The holographic projectors flickered and went dark. The fake sounds stopped, but the real earthquake kept getting stronger. Jake watched as both alien instructors began to panic. Their 6 legs were trembling, and their compound eyes were darting around frantically. They had never experienced anything like this before. Emergency protocol, Veltar was saying rapidly, but he seemed unable to decide which. Protocol applied, the shaking got more intense. Books began falling from real shelves. The aliens' equipment started sliding across tables. Emergency lights in the hallway began flashing. Crix made a high-pitched sound that his translator could not interpret. Both aliens were now pressed flat against the floor, their bodies shaking along with the building. Jake looked around at his fellow students. Most had automatically moved into proper earthquake positions. They were calm, alert, but not panicked. This was just another California earthquake. Amy was timing it with her phone's stopwatch. About 30 seconds so far. Could be a big one. The shaking got stronger still. This was definitely bigger than the simulations they had been practicing with. Jake estimated maybe 6.5 or 7.0 magnitude. Serious, but not catastrophic. Ryan was watching the ceiling tiles to see if any were coming loose. Lisa had moved to help Sam, who was sitting near a large window. Everything they were doing was calm, practiced, efficient, but the aliens were completely overwhelmed. Veltar was making rapid clicking sounds in his own language. Crix was pressed so flat against the floor that his shell was scraping against the tiles. Both of them were shaking worse than the building. Is this normal for your planet? Veltar managed to ask in English. Pretty normal, Jake replied. Maybe a little bigger than usual. The earthquake continued, growing stronger with each passing second. And that was when Jake realized they were in for something special. This was not going to be a little California earthquake. This was going to be a big one. The shaking intensified even more. Now Jake could hear the building itself groaning as it swayed back and forth. This was definitely the strongest earthquake he had ever experienced, and the aliens looked like they were about to have complete nervous breakdowns. The earthquake kept getting stronger. What had started as gentle rolling was now violent shaking that made the whole building sway. Jake had been through many earthquakes, but this one was definitely in the major category. The alien equipment that Crix had set up so carefully was now scattered across the floor. Expensive simulation devices bounced and slid as the ground heaved beneath them. The holographic projectors had shut down completely. leaving only emergency lighting. Instructor Voltar was pressed against the floor, with his 6 legs spread as wide as possible. His compound eyes were moving frantically, trying to track all the falling objects at once. Every few seconds he made high-pitched clicking sounds that his translation device could not process. Assistant, Instructor Crix, was in even worse shape. His body was shaking so hard that his shell rattled against the floor tiles. He had wrapped his thin arms around his head and was making a continuous low humming sound. Magnitude estimated at 7.2, Amy announced, checking her phone app. Shallow. Focus maybe 10 kilometers down. Epicenter is probably 50 kilometers east of here. Jake looked over at her. Amy was sitting calmly against the wall with her legs crossed, watching her phone screen like she was checking the weather. The earthquake was throwing her back and forth, but she just swayed with the motion. Duration so far is 90 seconds. Amy continued. Big ones like this can go for 3 or 4 minutes. 4 minutes? Veltar gasped from his position on the floor. How is that possible? Tectonic plates are really big, Amy explained patiently. Takes time for all that energy to release. Around the room, Jake could see how differently the humans and aliens were handling the situation. The 2 Zephyrian instructors were having what looked like complete nervous breakdowns. But the human students were adapting to the situation with typical human practicality. Lisa had moved to a spot away from the windows and was reading a textbook, holding it steady despite the shaking. Every time a particularly strong wave hit, she would pause, wait for it to pass, then continue reading. Ryan had pulled out a notebook and was sketching the building's movement patterns. Fascinating resonance frequency, he muttered to himself. The architects did good work. Most buildings would have sustained damage by now. Steve and Ben had found a comfortable spot near the back wall. Steve was eating a sandwich he had brought for lunch. Ben was playing a game on his phone, tilting the device to compensate for the building's motion. But the most impressive display of human earthquake management was happening in the corner where Sam, Alex, and Megan were sitting. All 3 had somehow fallen asleep. Jake could not believe it. The strongest earthquake in California history was shaking the building like a toy. Alien instructors were having panic attacks on the floor. Emergency alarms were blaring, and 3 of his classmates were taking a nap. How are they sleeping? Crix managed to ask, pointing one trembling arm toward the corner. It's kind of rhythmic, explained Carol, like being rocked to sleep. Sam always falls asleep during earthquakes, says the motion relaxes him. Both aliens made sounds that their translators gave up trying to convert into English. The earthquake entered a new phase with stronger rolling motions that made the whole building sway like a ship. This was definitely the biggest quake Jake had ever experienced. The emergency systems were now announcing evacuation procedures over the loudspeakers. Veltar tried to stand up, but the motion threw him back down immediately. We must evacuate, he called out. Follow emergency protocols. Exit the building in an orderly fashion. None of the human students moved. Why are you not evacuating? Crix demanded. You don't evacuate during an earthquake, explained Tony. You wait for it to stop, then you check for damage. Running around while everything is shaking is how you get hurt. But the protocols, Veltar protested. Those are your protocols, said Kate, for your stable planet. This is Earth. We have different rules here. Jake watched Danny, who had his camera out and was recording everything. Not the earthquake, but the aliens' reactions to the earthquake. Danny was clearly fascinated by how the Zephyrians were handling their first real seismic event. This is incredible footage, Danny said to Pete. Look how their physiology responds to unexpected ground motion. Their balance systems are completely overwhelmed. Another strong wave hit, this one lasting almost 30 seconds. The building groaned and swayed, but the human students just rode it out like experienced surfers. Amy looked up from her phone again. We're at 2 minutes 45 seconds. This is definitely going to be one for the record books. How can you be so calm? Veltar asked desperately. His voice was getting higher with each word. The ground is trying to shake us to death. No, it's not, Amy replied matter-of-factly. It's just releasing tectonic stress. The fault line has been building pressure for probably 50 years. This is actually good. Better to have one big release than lots of little ones. Holly, who had been quiet until now, pulled out her own phone and started making a call. The earthquake was still going strong, but she was having a casual conversation. Hi, Mom, Holly said into her phone, raising her voice slightly to be heard over the building's groaning. Yeah, we're getting a big one down here. Probably 7.0 or better. How's it up in Sacramento? Oh, just some rolling? Yeah, we're getting the full show. She paused to let a particularly strong wave pass, then continued her conversation. No, I'm fine. I'm at that alien school thing, remember? The aliens are not handling it very well. I think they're from one of those stable planets. Crix made a sound like a deflating balloon. He had given up trying to maintain proper posture and was just lying flat on his back, letting the earthquake throw him around. Your mother is concerned? Veltar asked Holly. Not really, Holly replied. She grew up here too. She just wanted to make sure I wasn't near any old buildings. This place is new construction, so it's fine. The earthquake began to taper off. The violent shaking became a gentler rolling motion, then reduced to small tremors. After 3 minutes and 20 seconds, it finally stopped. The sudden silence was almost as startling as the earthquake itself. Emergency alarms were still going off, but the building had stopped moving. Jake stood up and stretched. Around him, the other human students were also getting to their feet, checking their phones, gathering their scattered belongings. Sam, Alex, and Megan woke up and looked around sleepily. Is it over? Sam asked with a yawn. 7.3 magnitude, Amy announced, checking the updated readings on her phone. Duration 3 minutes, 22 seconds. Epicenter was 48 kilometers southeast. That's going to be felt as far north as Oregon. The two alien instructors remained on the floor. They were no longer being thrown around, but they seemed unable or unwilling to get up. Both were staring at the human students with expressions that Jake was pretty sure indicated complete shock. Are you hurt? Lisa asked Veltar kindly. Do you need help getting up? We are not injured, Veltar replied slowly. But we are also not capable of understanding what we just witnessed. What do you mean? Jake asked. You experienced a massive seismic event, Crix said, his voice barely above a whisper. The ground moved with enough force to destroy most structures. The shaking continued for over 3 minutes, and you treated it like a minor inconvenience. Well, said Ryan, it was kind of inconvenient. I dropped my pencil. Both aliens made the untranslatable sounds again. 3 of your group slept through. It, Veltar pointed out. How is that possible? Sam's always been a heavy sleeper, explained Carol. And Alex grew up near the Hayward Fault. He's used to it. What about her? Crix pointed at Megan. I was tired, Megan said with a shrug. The rocking motion was nice. Jake could see something changing in the aliens' posture. They were still on the floor, but now they were looking at the human students differently. Less like students, and more like something they could not quite comprehend. Perhaps, Veltar said very quietly, we need to reconsider our training program. The emergency alarms finally stopped ringing. In the sudden quiet, Jake could hear sirens in the distance and car alarms going off in the parking lot. But inside the training center, everything seemed remarkably normal. Well, normal except for the tumult. 2 alien instructors, who were still lying on the floor, staring at the ceiling with their large compound eyes. "Should we check the building for damage?" asked Amy, standing up and dusting off her jeans. "Good idea," agreed Ryan. He started walking around the room, looking at the walls and ceiling. "No cracks that I can see. The emergency lighting is working. Exit signs are still lit." Lisa was helping Sam gather up the scattered alien equipment. "Most of this stuff looks okay," she reported. "A few scratches, but nothing seems broken." Jake looked at Instructor Veltar, who had not moved since the earthquake ended. "Are you going to get up?" "We are reconsidering our understanding of reality." Veltar replied without moving. "Give us a moment." "Take your time," said Holly. She was back on her phone, texting updates to family members. "My cousin in San Francisco says they felt it there too. No damage, just some rattled nerves." Assistant Instructor Crix finally managed to sit up, but his movements were shaky and uncertain. "How many earthquakes like that do you experience per year?" "Earthquakes that big?" "Maybe one every few years," Amy answered. "Smaller ones happen all the time. We had 3 last month, but they were only 4.0 or 5.0 magnitude." "Only 4.0 or 5.0, Crix repeated in a hollow voice. "Yeah, you barely notice those," added Steve. "Unless you're sitting still, you might miss them completely." Both aliens made those untranslatable sounds again. Danny was still filming with his camera. "This is going to make an amazing documentary. Wait until people see how different species react to the same natural event." "Can I see that footage?" asked Ben. "I want to show my engineering professor how the building performed." The resonance frequency was exactly what we calculated in class. Jake was starting to feel like the aliens needed more help than emergency training. They both looked traumatized. "Maybe we should take a break," he suggested. "Get some fresh air, check on everyone." Veltar finally sat up, but his movements were slow and careful. "There will be no more training today, or tomorrow, or possibly ever." "What do you mean?" asked Lisa. "We came here to teach you emergency response," Veltar explained. "But what we have learned is that you do not need our teaching. You need our learning." "I don't understand," said Carol. Crix struggled to his feet, using the wall for support. "Our people have lived for thousands of years on a stable world. We developed emergency protocols for theoretical disasters that might happen to other species. But you live with real disasters every day." "It's not that bad," Tony protested. "Earthquakes are just part of living in California, like hurricanes in Florida or tornadoes in Kansas." Both aliens went completely still. "Hurricanes?" Veltar asked weakly. "Tornadoes?" Crix whispered. "Sure," said Pete. "Different regions have different weather patterns. It's all about knowing what to expect and being prepared." Amy nodded. "I grew up in Colorado. We had flash floods, avalanches, and wildfire season every year. My brother lives in Alaska, where they deal with earthquakes and blizzards. My sister is in Louisiana, where they get hurricanes." "Your entire planet is a disaster zone," Crix said in amazement. "No," Jake corrected. "Our planet is just active. Geology, weather, climate. It changes a lot. We adapted to deal with it." "How?" Veltar demanded. "How does a species adapt to constant disasters?" The human students looked at each other. The question seemed obvious to them, but apparently not to the aliens. "You just learn," explained Megan. "When you're little, your parents teach you what to do. Schools have drills. You practice until it becomes automatic. And you stay calm," added Kate. "Panicking makes everything worse. Plus, most of the time these things are not actually dangerous if you know what you're doing," said Alex, who had been quiet since waking up from his earthquake nap. "Buildings are designed to handle earthquakes. Weather services warn about Storms, it's all manageable. Veltar and Crix looked at each other and had a rapid conversation in their own language. Their translation devices could not keep up with how fast they were speaking. "We need to contact our superiors," Veltar announced finally. "This changes everything." "What changes everything?" asked Ryan. "Our entire approach to emergency education," Crix replied. "We have been teaching theoretical responses to hypothetical disasters. But you have practical experience with real disasters." "So?" said Holly. "So we are the students here, not the teachers." Jake was starting to understand what the aliens were getting at. "You want to learn from us?" "We need to learn from you," Veltar corrected. "Our people are beginning to explore more active worlds. Planets with unstable geology, severe weather, environmental hazards. We need to know how to survive in places like yours." "But you have all that advanced equipment," pointed out Danny. "Those simulation machines are incredible." "Simulations are not reality," Crix said sadly. "We can create the appearance of danger, but we cannot create the experience of living with real danger every day." Amy was looking thoughtful. "You know, there are university programs for this kind of thing. Disaster management, emergency response, environmental adaptation. You could audit some classes." "We could set up field trips," suggested Sam. "Show you around different regions, different types of hazards. Earthquake country, tornado alley. Hurricane zones," added Ben. "Let you experience the real thing in safe conditions." The aliens were listening intently to every suggestion. "You would do this?" Beltar asked. "You would teach us?" "Sure," said Jake. "Why not? Seems like it could be useful for both species." Lisa pulled out her phone. "I can text my professor at UC Davis. She runs the emergency management program. I bet she would love to have alien students." "My dad works for FEMA," offered Tony. "He's always looking for new approaches to disaster response." Veltar stood up slowly, still shaky, but more stable than before. "We must return to our ship and file a new report with the Galactic Educational Authority." "What kind of report?" asked Carol. "A recommendation that the emergency response training program be discontinued," Crix replied, "and a request that it be replaced with a cultural exchange program where Zephyrian students come to Earth to learn from humans." "Cool," said Steve. "Will you tell them about the earthquake?" "We will tell them that humans are the most disaster-resistant species we have ever encountered," Veltar said, "and that other galactic civilizations should be sending their students to learn from you, not the other way around." The aliens began gathering up their scattered equipment. Most of it had survived the earthquake better than they had. "Before you go," Jake said, "do you want some tips for dealing with earthquakes? In case you experience any more while you're here?" Both aliens stopped what they were doing and turned to look at him. "You would share your knowledge?" Crix asked. "Of course," Jake replied. "Basic earthquake safety is pretty simple." "Want me to show you?" For the next 20 minutes, the human students gave the alien instructors a crash course in earthquake preparedness. Drop, cover, and hold on. Stay away from windows and heavy objects. Don't run outside during the shaking. Keep emergency supplies. Handied out, the aliens took notes on everything, asking detailed questions about each procedure. "This is far more practical than our protocols," Veltar admitted. "Your methods are based on actual experience." "Thousands of years of experience," Amy pointed out. "Humans have been dealing with earthquakes since we started building permanent settlements." As the aliens prepared to leave, Crix turned back to the group. "One final question. That earthquake was magnitude 7.3. How often do you experience earthquakes stronger than that? In California?" "Maybe once every 10 or 20 years, Amy answered. "The big one in 1906 was probably 7.8. The Loma Prieta quake in 1989 was 6.9. "And people continue to live here?" Veltar asked. Sure, said Jake. It's home. Besides, the weather is nice most of the time. Both aliens made those untranslatable sounds one last time, but now Jake thought they might be sounds of admiration, rather than confusion. We will return, Veltar promised as they headed for the exit, with different equipment and a completely different curriculum. Next time, we want to learn from you. After the aliens left, the human students started gathering their own belongings. The building would need to be inspected before classes could resume, and everyone wanted to get home to check on family and friends. That was interesting, said Lisa as they walked toward the parking lot. Yeah, Jake agreed. I wonder what kind of training program they'll come up with next time. Probably something more realistic, said Amy, based on actual human experience instead of alien theory. As they reached the parking lot, Jake's phone buzzed with a text from his little sister. Did you feel that earthquake? It was awesome. I was at soccer practice, and everyone just kept playing. Jake showed the message to his friends, and they all laughed. Humans, he thought, were probably going to be very popular teachers in the galactic education system.